Delete all of it. That's a command, not a request, Dr. Sylvia said, her index finger jabbing at my computer monitor, where 8 months of meticulously collected data glowed back at us. The laboratory had emptied hours ago, and only the hum of equipment filled the silence between her words. I looked at my research, thousands of hours tracking the Azurian butterfly's migration patterns through the Viridia forest, countless nights spent in makeshift tents, days wading through swamps, and weeks analyzing minute wing movements, all captured in charts, graphs, and field notes. This research isn't conclusive, she continued, though we both knew that was a lie. The migration patterns you've recorded don't meet scientific standards. The board agrees it's best to start fresh. I pulled my laptop closer, angling the screen so she could watch. As you wish, I said, opening the main database. I selected all files, folders, and backups related to Project Azurian. With one click, I initiated the deletion. The progress bar crept forward as my supervisor's reflection in the screen showed the faintest smile. What she couldn't see was what else I had programmed to happen when those specific files were deleted, something that would make sure the truth couldn't be buried as easily as my research. Before I continue this story, if you're enjoying this so far, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more incredible stories like this one. Your support means everything to creators like me who spend hours crafting these real-life tales of revenge and justice. Drop a comment about what you think Sylvia doesn't know yet. Now, let's get back to what happened next. My name is Nadia, and until 3 weeks ago, I was a wildlife biologist specializing in endangered butterfly species. I'd spent my entire career believing science could protect what mattered. That data spoke louder than dollars. That belief died the moment I discovered why my supervisor wanted my research gone. I joined the Ecological Research Division of the Natural Sciences Institute 9 months ago, thrilled to be studying the mysterious Azurian butterfly, a species so rare, most researchers never encountered one in their lifetime. Their wings shimmered with an electric blue that seemed to pulse in sunlight, making them almost appear to glow against the deep green of the Viridia forest canopy. Your tracking methods are revolutionary, Doctor, Sylvia had told me during my interview. We need innovative thinking like yours if we're going to save these creatures before development swallows their habitat. I believed her. I believed in the mission. I turned down 2 higher-paying positions to work under her guidance, convinced we shared the same passion for conservation. The first 6 months were everything I'd dreamed of. I developed microscopic trackers that could adhere to butterfly wings without affecting flight patterns. I created an algorithm that predicted migration timing based on subtle temperature shifts. I mapped breeding grounds no one had identified before. This could redefine how we establish conservation boundaries, Dr. Sylvia said when I presented my preliminary findings. She stood in our field station, rain pounding the metal roof, nodding with apparent pride at my work. My dedication came at a personal cost. Travis, my boyfriend of 3 years, left after I postponed our vacation for the 4th time. My apartment collected dust while I lived in the field station. I contracted a tropical illness that left me bedridden for weeks, yet I continued analyzing data from my sickbed. The butterflies don't take vacations, I told Travis during our last conversation. Their entire species hangs by a thread. He didn't understand. How could anyone who hadn't watched an Azurian butterfly emerge from its chrysalis, who hadn't tracked a single specimen across hundreds of miles, marveling at nature's invisible roadmaps? Everything changed when Dr. Sylvia returned from a 2-week absence. She'd attended what she called stakeholder meetings regarding future funding. The woman who stepped back into our laboratory was subtly different. Her enthusiasm for my discoveries had cooled. We need to revisit your conclusions, she announced, scrolling through my latest migration maps. These patterns seem statistically insignificant when we adjust for normal variance. I was stunned. Normal variance? We have 3 seasons of data showing these aren't random movements. The Azurians return to these exact coordinates each mating season. She tapped a manicured nail against the monitor. Science requires skepticism, Nadia. Your attachment to these insects is clouding your judgment. That night, I stayed late, reviewing my methodology. Had I made an error? Had confirmation bias led me astray? I pulled up satellite images of the breeding grounds I'd identified, an undisturbed section of the Viridia forest marked by a distinctive curve in the river. As I zoomed out, I noticed something new: survey markers, digital tags for property assessment. Curious, I searched public records for the parcel. The land had been purchased 8 months ago by Emerald Horizons Development, with plans submitted for a luxury eco-resort called Azure Retreat. The name struck me as odd. Azure, like the Azurian butterflies, no one knew existed there. I dug deeper. Emerald Horizons had submitted an environmental impact statement claiming 0 endangered species in the development zone. Their CEO was listed as Terrence Mitchell, Dr. Sylvia's husband. My hands trembled as I connected the dots. The breeding grounds I'd discovered sat precisely where they planned to build the resort's main attraction, a series of glass-bottomed pools extending over the river canyon. The next morning, my keycard wouldn't work. System error, the security guard explained with a shrug. I waited 2 hours for it to restore my access. Inside the lab, I discovered someone had been in my workstation. Files were arranged differently. Equipment I needed for verification tests was suddenly out for calibration. Strange timing, I mentioned to Ming, a junior researcher who'd been helping me tag butterflies. Things have been strange since Dr. Sylvia got back, Ming whispered. She's been having closed-door meetings with administration. Budget discussions, she says. That afternoon, I tried accessing the tracking system remotely to confirm my findings. The baseline measurements had been altered. Someone had modified my original data to minimize the butterfly population's significance. I checked my email and found a new message. Budget review meeting tomorrow, 9 a.m. It was unusual. Mid-project budget reviews weren't standard protocol. I printed key findings, downloaded my raw data to a personal drive, and recalibrated my tracking devices after everyone left. While working, I discovered a message thread on Dr. Sylvia's unlocked computer. She'd been receiving consulting fees from Emerald Horizons, $15,000 per month for environmental advisory services. The next morning, Dr. Sylvia asked me to share my latest findings with the budget committee. As I presented, I noticed their expressions, not confusion or interest, but polite impatience. Thank you, Nadia, Dr. Sylvia interrupted halfway through my explanation of migration patterns. I think we've seen enough to make our decision. The committee chair, a man I'd never met, cleared his throat. Given the inconclusive nature of your findings and budgetary constraints, we're recommending a redirection of resources. Redirection? I asked. Project termination, he clarified. Dr. Sylvia will oversee the proper closure of your research, which led to tonight, my supervisor watching as I deleted my life's most important work. I'm glad you're being reasonable, she said, watching the last file disappear. The committee feels your methodology was problematic. I'll provide a neutral reference for your next position. I closed my laptop. Problematic like falsifying endangered species data to clear construction permits? Her smile vanished. That's a serious accusation with 0 merit. Remember who controls your professional future. Message received, I said, gathering my things. As I reached the door, she added, the Institute requires all research materials to remain on site. That includes field notes and personal observations. I handed over my notebooks without protest, watching her lock them in her cabinet. The Viridia Forest Preservation hearing is next month, I said casually. Will you be testifying about the absence of endangered species? The scientific consensus is clear, she replied coolly. No significant impact has been established. Science is fascinating, I said, lingering in the doorway. Sometimes the tiniest creatures have the most surprising impact on the world around them. Something flickered in her eyes. Uncertainty, perhaps. But her confidence quickly returned. Goodbye, Nadia. I suggest focusing on your next career move, rather than dwelling on theoretical butterflies. As I walked to my car, phone in hand, I pulled up the special app I'd created months ago, one that monitored the microscopic trackers attached to hundreds of Azurian butterflies throughout the Viridia Forest. The deletion sequence I'd initiated wasn't just erasing files, it was activating Phase 1. I sat in my car watching the tracker app initialize. Each tiny dot representing an Azurian butterfly pulsed on my screen. When I designed these trackers 6 months ago, I'd added a feature no one knew about, a secondary activation protocol that could change the tracker's behavior. Not harmful to the butterflies, but tremendously useful to me. Phase 1 was data preservation. While Dr. Sylvia watched me delete the Institute's copies, my system was busy transmitting everything to secure servers. But that was just the beginning. I drove home in silence, streetlights casting yellow pools on empty roads. My small apartment felt foreign after spending so little time there. Plants had dried up. Mail overflowed from the basket. I hadn't bothered unpacking the boxes Travis left behind when he moved out 2 months ago. Your butterflies mean more to you than I do, he'd said, standing in the doorway with his suitcase. I don't even recognize who you've become. He was right, in a way. I had changed. The forest had changed me. I remember the first time I saw an Azurian butterfly up close. I was setting up monitoring equipment by the river bend when it landed on my field journal. Its wings, electric blue with intricate black patterns, seemed to pulse with their own inner light. It stayed for nearly 5 minutes, long enough for me to notice the unique pattern on its right wing, a marking that resembled a tiny crescent moon. I named him Apollo, though I knew scientists weren't supposed to name their subjects. For weeks, I tracked Apollo's movements, watching him travel precisely the same route each day, from the flowering trees near the ridge to the water's edge at dusk. When I finally attached a tracker to his wing, I felt like I'd been entrusted with something precious. Apollo led me to the breeding grounds, a hidden clearing where thousands of Azurians gathered in a spectacle few human eyes had witnessed. The sight brought tears to my eyes. Thousands of electric blue wings moving in synchronized waves, like the forest itself was breathing. That discovery changed everything. The breeding grounds weren't just important, they were critical to the species' survival, and they sat directly in the path of Terrence Mitchell's bulldozers. I showered and changed, then opened my laptop to review the full extent of what I'd discovered about Emerald Horizons. Their environmental impact statement claimed extensive surveys had found no endangered species in the development zone, a statement signed off by 3 scientists, including Dr. Sylvia, who was listed as an independent consultant. The plans for Azure Retreat were ambitious: 50 luxury cabins, a main lodge with glass-bottom pools extending over the river canyon, and helicopter pads for guests who preferred not to drive the winding forest roads. The marketing materials boasted about immersive nature experiences, while promising to leave no footprint on the pristine landscape. The irony would be laughable if it wasn't so devastating. I checked the tracker app again. The butterflies were gathering, their movements changing subtly as the new programming took effect. Phase 2 would begin at dawn. Sleep evaded me that night. I kept seeing Dr. Sylvia's satisfied smile as my research disappeared. 8 months of my life, gone with a click. She believed science could be erased as easily as files on a hard drive. She didn't understand that real science lives in the world, not just in our documentation of it. Morning came with gray light filtering through blinds I'd forgotten to close. My phone buzzed with a text from Ming. "They cleaned out your desk already. S is telling everyone you had methodological problems. This isn't right." I replied, "Thank you for letting me know. Be careful." "What are you going to do?" Ming asked. "Watch the butterflies," I wrote back. I made coffee and settled at my kitchen table with my laptop. The tracking app showed increased activity, hundreds of Azurians moving in new patterns, their microscopic trackers now emitting different signals. To the naked eye, nothing would appear unusual about their behavior, but satellites and specialized cameras would tell a different story. At 9:47 a.m., my phone rang. Unknown number. "Miss Nadia Karai?" A woman's voice, crisp and professional. "Speaking. This is Zara from the Environmental Protection Agency. We've received some unusual satellite imagery from the Viridia Forest region. Our systems indicate you might have relevant expertise." My heart raced. "What kind of imagery?" "I'm not at liberty to discuss details over the phone. Could you come to our field office? Today, if possible." 2 hours later, I sat in a sparse government office, facing Zara, a stern-looking woman with close-cropped hair and intelligent eyes, and her colleague, a man introduced only as Director Hammond. "These images came through this morning," Zara said, turning her monitor toward me. "Our satellite picked up unusual spectral patterns in the Viridia forest." The screen showed thermal imagery of the forest, and there, in the precise location of the breeding grounds, was a pattern too regular to be natural. Hundreds of heat signatures forming what looked almost like letters. "We've never seen anything like this," Director Hammond said. "The pattern appears to spell out coordinates." I kept my expression neutral. "Fascinating. Have you verified the coordinates?" "They point to what appears to be a clearing in the forest, the same location as these heat signatures." Zara switched to another image. "What's strange is this area was recently surveyed for a development project. The environmental impact statement declared no significant wildlife activity." "Is that so?" I took a sip from the water they'd offered me. "And you called me because?" "Your name appeared in research database queries related to this region." "Something about butterfly migration patterns?" Hammond leaned forward. "Research that apparently was discontinued." I chose my words carefully. I was studying the Azurian butterfly. My project was terminated due to budget constraints. "The Azurian?" Zara's eyebrows rose. That's a critically endangered species. If they're present in this region, any development would require extensive mitigation. If they exist there, I agreed. My former supervisor concluded they don't. Hammond and Zara exchanged glances. Miss Karai, Hammond said, would you be willing to join a field investigation? We're assembling a team to verify these findings. Your expertise would be valuable. When? Tomorrow morning. The Environmental Review Board has suspended the development permits pending investigation. I nodded slowly. I'll be there. That evening, as I packed my field gear, my phone rang again. Dr. Sylvia. I let it go to voicemail, then listened to her message. Nadia, I've just been contacted by the EPA about some ridiculous claim regarding Azurians in the development zone. I know you're behind this somehow. Whatever you think you're doing, stop now. You're risking your entire career on a vendetta. Call me immediately. I didn't call back. Instead, I checked the tracker app. Phase 2 was proceeding perfectly. The Azurians were forming increasingly complex patterns, visible only to specialized equipment, patterns that would be impossible to dismiss as random movement. At 7 a.m. the next day, I met the EPA team at the forest entrance. To my surprise, Ming was there too. They called me as well, she explained quietly. I told them I assisted with your research. Before I could respond, a black SUV pulled up. Dr. Sylvia stepped out, followed by a tall man in an expensive suit, Terrence Mitchell himself. This is absurd, he announced to no one in particular. We've already conducted thorough environmental assessments. This project has been approved at every level. Director Hammond approached them. Mr. Mitchell, Dr. Sylvia, thank you for joining us. We're investigating new evidence that suggests endangered species may be present in the development zone. What evidence? Dr. Sylvia demanded. Her eyes found me in the group, narrowing dangerously. Based on research that failed peer review? Based on satellite imagery received yesterday, Hammond replied calmly, and heat signature patterns that seem to indicate organized butterfly movement. Terrence Mitchell scoffed. Butterflies don't organize, Director. They're insects. Let's find out, shall we? Hammond gestured toward the trail. We've brought specialized equipment to verify the findings. Our group hiked for 2 hours, following the winding path to the clearing I knew so well. Dr. Sylvia stayed close behind me, occasionally making remarks just loud enough for me to hear. Whatever you think you've done, it won't work. Your career is over after this stunt. No one will believe you over established science. I remained silent, watching the tracker app on my phone. We were getting close. The clearing should be just ahead, and if the butterflies were following their programmed patterns, we stepped into the open space by the river bend. At first glance, it appeared empty, just a beautiful forest clearing with morning sunlight filtering through the canopy. Director Hammond looked confused. The coordinates led here, but I don't see any. Wait, Zara interrupted, pointing to her specialized camera. Look at this. She turned the screen for everyone to see. Through the thermal imaging camera, what was invisible to the naked eye became startlingly clear. Thousands of Azurian butterflies hovered throughout the clearing, their wings creating patterns of movement that formed clear, unmistakable shapes, coordinates, dates, and what appeared to be a timeline of their presence in this exact location. This is impossible, Dr. Sylvia whispered, her face paling. Not impossible, I said, speaking at last. Just science you tried to erase. Terrence Mitchell pushed forward to look at the camera. This proves nothing. Those could be any species of butterfly. Ming stepped forward, pulling a specimen collection kit from her backpack. We can verify the species right here, Mr. Mitchell. As if on cue, a single butterfly descended from the canopy, its blue wings catching the sunlight. It hovered near Ming, who gently captured it in a clear viewing container. Azurian butterfly, she confirmed, holding up the container for all to see. Note the distinctive wing pattern and coloration. Critically endangered, with fewer than 5,000 estimated specimens remaining in the wild. Dr. Sylvia's composure cracked. This is a setup. Nadia must have released these butterflies here. Check her equipment. She's manipulating this somehow. Director Hammond turned to me with a questioning look. The butterflies have always been here, I said calmly. My research proved it months ago. I've tracked their migration patterns for 3 seasons. This is their breeding ground. Then why did your own research get discontinued? Terrence demanded. I met Dr. Sylvia's gaze. Ask her. Ask her about the consulting fees she's been receiving from Emerald Horizons while supposedly conducting independent environmental assessments. Hammond's expression hardened. Is this true, Doctor? Before she could answer, more EPA officials emerged from the tree line, carrying specialized equipment. "Director," one called out, "we're picking up signals from hundreds of electronic devices in this clearing, some kind of miniature trackers." "Trackers I designed," I explained, "attached to Azurian butterflies throughout the past 8 months. Each one logs location data, temperature, and movement patterns. Data that proves these butterflies have been using this breeding ground for at least 3 consecutive seasons." Dr. Sylvia's phone rang. She answered, listened for a moment, then looked at her husband with undisguised panic. "The Environmental Review Board just suspended all permits indefinitely," she whispered. "They're launching a full investigation into our approval process." Terrence Mitchell's face contorted with rage. "This is your fault," he hissed at me. "You've destroyed years of planning over some worthless insects." "No," I replied. "You did that when you tried to bury the truth." As Director Hammond pulled Dr. Sylvia aside for questioning, Ming approached me. "The tracking system? The patterns? How did you do it?" I watched Apollo, my first tagged butterfly, land on a nearby branch, his wings catching the morning light. "I programmed the trackers to change their emission signals when activated by the deletion sequence," I explained quietly. "Each tracker influences the butterfly's movement just slightly through minute temperature changes, not enough to harm them, but enough to create patterns when thousands move together." "But your research, all that data, it's still gone, isn't it?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "Is it?" As the EPA team continued their investigation in the clearing, I watched Dr. Sylvia being interviewed separately by Director Hammond. Her confident demeanor had crumbled, replaced by defensive gestures and occasional glances in my direction. Terrence Mitchell was on his phone, pacing and speaking in hushed, urgent tones. "I don't care what it costs. Find a way to salvage this," he snapped before ending the call and approaching me. "Name your price," he said without preamble. I raised an eyebrow. "Excuse me? Everyone has a number." His voice dropped lower. "The resort represents a $100 million investment. We can make arrangements that benefit everyone. Like the arrangements you made with my former supervisor?" His jaw tightened. "Sylvia provided expert consultation based on preliminary findings. If your research contradicted those findings, perhaps we could have found a compromise, relocated the butterflies, created a sanctuary elsewhere." "Azurians can't be relocated," I said. "They navigate using electromagnetic fields specific to this river canyon. Their entire life cycle is adapted to this exact location." "And your life?" he asked, glancing around to ensure no one was listening. "What's that adapted to? Teaching for $40,000 a year? Lab work with no recognition? I'm offering you a chance to actually make a difference, with resources." For a brief moment, I understood how Dr. Sylvia had fallen. The promise of influence, of impact, beyond what a researcher's salary could provide. The allure of being valued in a system that often treated scientists as expendable. "My price," I said slowly, "is the truth. Nothing more." Terrence's face hardened, noble but naive. "This isn't over." He walked away just as Zara approached with her tablet. "Miss Karai, these readings are extraordinary. The butterfly population here is nearly triple what would constitute critical habitat designation. And these movement patterns, they're practically speaking to us." "That's exactly what they're doing," I said. "The trackers are programmed to influence their flight patterns in ways that create visible data, like a living graph showing their presence over time." More EPA officials arrived, setting up additional equipment around the clearing. One team was taking soil and water samples, while another documented every species of plant in the area. Ming joined us, excitement evident in her voice. They found 5 more endangered species dependent on this ecosystem, all missed in the original assessment. "This isn't just about the butterflies anymore." "It never was," I replied. "The Azurians are what ecologists call an indicator species. Their presence signals a healthy, intact ecosystem." Director Hammond returned, his expression grim but resolved. "Dr. Sylvia has been temporarily relieved of her duties pending investigation. Mr. Mitchell's company is facing multiple violations of the Environmental Protection Act." He paused, looking at me carefully. "She claims you fabricated evidence, possibly introduced butterflies to this location. Check the DNA sequencing from the wing samples," I suggested. "Multiple generations of Azurians have lived here. Their genetic markers will show adaptation to this specific microclimate, something impossible to fake." Hammond nodded. "We're already processing those tests. But there's another matter. Your terminated research. Doctor, Sylvia insists all your findings were properly reviewed and found methodologically unsound." I pulled out my phone and opened an app I hadn't shown anyone yet. About that. The app connected to a secure server where every piece of my research had been backing up automatically, every day, every observation, every data point, for 8 months. The deletion sequence you witnessed triggered a complete data transfer to secure cloud storage, I explained, handing him my phone, including recordings of every conversation in the laboratory for the past 3 months. Hammond scrolled through the files, his eyebrows rising. You recorded conversations? My tracking devices have audio capabilities for monitoring butterfly wing sounds, I clarified. They happen to be active during several interesting discussions about adjusting data to meet Emerald Horizon's needs. And this was all triggered when you deleted your research? I nodded. The same command that supposedly erased my work actually preserved and distributed it. Every research institution in the country received copies this morning, along with the environmental protection agencies in 3 states. Hammond handed my phone back, a hint of admiration in his eyes. Thorough. Science usually is, when done properly. Over the next several hours, more officials arrived. The clearing became a hub of activity as the full extent of the environmental significance became clear. By mid-afternoon, news vans had appeared at the forest edge, reporters eager to cover the story of endangered butterflies halting a major development. Dr. Sylvia refused to look at me as she was escorted to a vehicle. Terrence Mitchell remained, watching the destruction of his plans with cold fury. As the sun began to set, casting long shadows through the trees, Director Hammond approached me again. We've received preliminary verification of your research from 3 independent laboratories. The genetic testing confirms these butterflies are indeed native to this specific location. I felt a weight lifting from my shoulders, the vindication I'd been working toward. There's something else, Hammond continued. The International Conservation Committee is requesting your presence at their emergency session tomorrow. They're considering permanent protected status for the entire Viridia forest based on your findings. I'll be there, I promised. As the teams packed up their equipment, I walked to the river's edge, needing a moment alone. The water flowed clear and swift over smooth stones, just as it had the first day I arrived here. A flutter of blue caught my attention. Apollo, distinguishable by the crescent mark on his wing, landing on a flower near my feet. He stayed just long enough for me to admire his delicate beauty before rising again, joining hundreds of others dancing in the fading light. Ming found me there, watching the butterflies. They're saying this could be the largest protected butterfly habitat in North America, she said, sitting beside me on a fallen log. That was always the goal, I replied. Protection, not publication. Is that why you built in the backup system? You knew they might try to suppress your findings? I shook my head. Not at first. I started the automatic backups after I discovered the Azurians' breeding ground. Basic scientific practice. Protect your data. But after I found Dr. Sylvia's connection to Emerald Horizons, I created the deletion protocol. The ultimate trap, Ming said with admiration. You gave her exactly what she wanted, the appearance of compliance, while actually activating your countermeasures. The final phase activates tomorrow, I said quietly. Ming looked surprised. There's more? Before I could answer, my phone buzzed with a notification. I checked it and smiled. It's starting already. The notification was from a major scientific journal, an emergency publication request for my complete Azurian butterfly research. Similar requests began flooding in, from conservation organizations, universities, and government agencies worldwide. What exactly happens tomorrow? Ming asked. The International Conservation Committee meeting will be broadcast live to research institutions globally, I explained. During my presentation, the tracking system will activate its final protocol, synchronized wing movement, across all tagged butterflies. Thousands of Azurians will simultaneously display the same pattern, visible to standard cameras. No specialized equipment needed. Like a living billboard, Ming breathed. Exactly. A message no one can ignore or deny. And that's when I'll reveal the rest of what I discovered in Dr. Sylvia's files. Ming looked confused. What else is there? I pulled out a small drive from my pocket. Evidence that Emerald Horizons has been systematically falsifying environmental reports for 6 other development sites across 3 states. Emails showing Dr. Sylvia has been helping them identify which researchers might be flexible about their findings. A complete network of scientific fraud that extends to at least 4 other conservation projects. How did you get all that? When you're invisible enough, people stop hiding things from you, I said simply. Dr. Sylvia never thought I'd look at her computer. never imagined I understood enough about corporate structures to follow the money. She saw me as just another replaceable researcher, someone who could be intimidated, bought, or discredited. The next morning, I stood before the International Conservation Committee, my research displayed on screens around the chamber. Representatives from environmental agencies worldwide watched as I presented not just my findings on the Azurian butterfly, but the complete web of corruption that had nearly destroyed their habitat. As predicted, during my presentation, news stations across the country interrupted their broadcasts to show live footage of the Viridia forest, where thousands of Azurian butterflies had formed a mesmerizing pattern visible from news helicopters, their wings creating a living map of all the threatened habitats connected to Emerald Horizons developments. Within hours, investigations were launched into all of Terence Mitchell's projects. Dr. Sylvia's academic credentials were suspended pending review. The Viridia forest was designated a protected sanctuary, with a research center to be established at its edge, a center I was invited to lead. 3 months later, I stood in that same clearing, now marked with unobtrusive observation platforms designed to minimize human impact. A group of young researchers listened attentively as I explained the Azurian's life cycle. The most important lesson isn't about butterflies, I told them, watching Apollo's descendants flutter through dappled sunlight. It's about resilience. Truth doesn't disappear when someone tries to delete it. Sometimes, it just finds new ways to take flight. As the students dispersed to begin their observations, I checked my phone. An email notification showed Dr. Sylvia had been formally stripped of her scientific credentials. Terence Mitchell's company had declared bankruptcy following multiple environmental violation fines. The system that had almost silenced me had been transformed instead. I pocketed my phone and looked up at the canopy, where blue wings caught the light like living sapphires. In the end, my revenge wasn't just exposing corruption or saving butterflies. It was creating something permanent, protected forest, scientific truth, and the knowledge that sometimes the smallest creatures make the most lasting impact. If you've enjoyed this true story of environmental justice, please hit the like button and subscribe to hear more tales of courage and persistence. Have you ever stood up for what's right when everyone told you to back down? Share your experience in the comments below. And remember, sometimes the most powerful act isn't fighting the system, but changing it entirely, one small wing beat at a time.